Blog Talk Radio.
Your experience begin right now. From high atop the mountains of British Columbia to you listening around the world, this is Spaced Out Radio. You can follow us on our website, spacedoutradio.com, on Twitter, @SpacedOutRadio. Give our Facebook page a like, Spaced Out Radio Show. You can follow us on Instagram, Dave Scott, SOR, or on our YouTube channel, Spaced Out Radio Show. Buckle up, space travelers. It's time to go for a ride as we are live on Spaced Out Radio.
Space Out Radio tonight. I am your host, Dave Scott, and thank you so much for tuning in to SpaceOutRadio.com as we come in from the frozen Canadian tundra, battle our way past the wild animals, sidestep Bigfoot, and enter Uncle Jimbo's cabin, stoke the fire, heat this place up, and broadcast you live on this Friday night, early Saturday morning if you're on the East Coast. Here at SOR, we do this thing 7 days a week. We want to be your official one-stop shop when it comes to the supernatural, conspiratorial, paranormal, ufological, and so much more. Space Out Radio's theme music is courtesy of guitar god Ron Bumblefoot Thal. You can find his new album, Little Brother Is Watching, by going to our website, spacedoutradio.com. Hey, if you want to follow us on Twitter, you can do so at Spaced Out Radio, on Facebook, Spaced Out Radio Show, Instagram, Dave Scott, SOR, subscribe to our YouTube channel, Spaced Out Radio Show, and our new look website is spacedoutradio.com. At this time, we'd love to give a shout-out to our fans participating in the Spaced Out Radio chat room, along with Paranormal Into the Night and Paranormal Forum. Thank you so much for being with us. Hey, if you head to our website at spacedoutradio.com, you can check out Cat's Corner. Psychic Catherine Fallman answers one lucky listener's submitted question per week. Tonight's show is brought to you by Rivulet Reiki and Readings, providing healings in person or at a distance. Space Out Radio listeners receive a 10% discount on pricing. PurplePlates.com. Help heal your body, mind, and soul. Drop into their site and heal yourself today. 80,000 people a month read the new Agora newspaper, find out what's happening around the world regarding politics, health, supernatural, paranormal, and so much more. And if you have an iPhone and you have $1, you can download the Spirit Storybox. Spirit Storybox, the official ghost hunting app of Spaced Out Radio. I do want to remind our listeners that we are changing formats. Either this Monday, the 21st, just after the weekend, or Monday, March 28th, we will be moving this show to Spreaker. So if you want to find us, Spreaker.com, and then in the little search box, go to Spaced Out Radio. That's where we will be. We were trying for 1,000 followers, so that way we can apply to go to iHeartRadio. We hope you give us a shot, but we will keep you up to date on the official date of the move of Spaced Out Radio. Tonight we discuss a 500-plus-year-old mystery of an old colony that just vanished. Here's the Coles Notes version of today's history lesson. The Roanoke colony was established on Roanoke Island, which is now part of North Carolina. It was a late 16th century attempt by Queen Elizabeth I to try and establish a permanent English settlement. The colony was founded by Sir Walter Raleigh. The colonists disappeared during the Anglo-Spanish War, 3 years after the last shipment of supplies from England. Their disappearance gave rise to the nickname the Lost Colony. Today, there's been no conclusive evidence as to what happened to the people. But the main question is, what happened to them? Did they assimilate with Native Americans in the populated area? Were they murdered? Did they just up and move thinking that England had forgotten about them? You may recognize Jim Vieira's name from the History Channel, as he is trying to prove that both giants and ancient civilizations exist. He has studied Roanoke, trying to figure out the mystery to it. And tonight, he makes his first appearance on Spaced Out Radio. On that note, we bring Jim Vieira into Spaced Out Radio land. Jim, thank you so much for being with us tonight. How are you doing?
Good, Dave. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Well, we appreciate you coming on the air. I know a lot of our listeners are pretty excited to find out that we had you on coming on the show. How did you get interested in all these mysteries that you seem to be searching for?
That's a good question. I think when I was a kid, my dad would read my brother and I a lot of mystery stories, usually like Edward Rowe Snow. We grew up in Boston, near Boston Lighthouse, and a lot of the tales were of shipwrecks and haunted lighthouses and things like that. And it just really resonated with me and my brother, just this desire to unravel a mystery and love of mystery. And it draws you into researching in libraries and reading. And I don't know, there's a real appeal to it. My father was, he fought in World War II in Berlin and was a shipbuilder, but he was a real intellectual kind of on the side, and encouraged us to study and to read and to be open-minded. And I remember the stack of National Geographics we had at the house, and the old Hiram Bingham Machu Picchu edition and things like that. So I would have to tip my hat to my father to instill a love of mystery.
And what about the history lesson that goes along with that? You have to be kind of a history buff in order to want to dig into something that maybe is a few bylines on or a chapter on a history book as to where things like the Lost Colony of Roanoke are hidden.
I've always, it was funny, when I was younger, I heard about the Lost Colony. I remember seeing in one of my history books in 7th grade, John White reading Croatoan carved on the fence post at the colony, the Lost Colony's fort when he got back with the supply ship, and obviously everyone had vanished. And I just thought, wow, that's interesting. I hope the rest of history is like that. But unfortunately, a lot of the history we learned when I was in school anyways is very, very bland, and they bypassed Native American civilization in the past, and there was a lot of tariff acts and endless wars and just crap I didn't really care about. And I just I have a real zest to learn about ancient civilizations around the globe, what they were doing, how old some really were, their level of sophistication, and kind of most importantly for me, their metaphysical teachings or spiritual understandings. I think that's particularly fascinating, especially here in the United States.
We are talking with Jim Vieira tonight on Spaced Out Radio. He is an investigator of the Roanoke Lost Colony as well as giants around the world. And I do want to touch on giants because that is an interesting topic to me at least. But I want to focus just on you here for a few moments, Jim, because you're from Boston, Mass. Originally. Your Bruins beat the hell out of my Canucks in 2011. I want to tell you right now that Stanley Cup final is still simmering inside me. I'm hurt by that, but I got a couple of friends who work with the Bruins, or one used to play for them, now plays in L.A., Milan Lucic. But that one must have, as much as it stung for me, you must have been pretty happy when that happened.
I honestly, I thought Vancouver was going to sweep them. I really just, the firepower, they had the goaltending, and I was really surprised. I'm a lifelong Bruins fan. I'm not like a sports loser. I just appreciate it. There's a lot of knuckleheads. But Boston fans are not as obnoxious as portrayed. Even like I'm a Patriots fan too, and the Patriots gets a lot of heat, but they're just really good, quite honestly. But I know how that sting feels, and sometimes you lose one, and it's just like the Pats losing both those Super Bowls to Eli Manning, and oh man, it's just gross, and it sits with you for years. It's like a feedback loop in your head. So I feel your pain.
Oh, I hear you there. Now, considering that you study history, you've done a couple of television shows in regards to the Lost Giants, the Lost Colony of Roanoke. How did you end up getting involved on the TV side of the mysteries that you're trying to solve?
Interestingly enough, I'll give some background on me. I studied economics at the University of Massachusetts, and basically, it's a profession I didn't want to follow through with because I like to be physically engaged, and I took up being a stonemason along with my brother, and we own a dry masons company out here in Western Mass, and we build old walls and stone towers and art projects and all kinds of stonework. And I would hike the woods and start to out in the Northeast there. The orthodox claim is that all the stonework you see is early colonial, and I started to see things that really were speaking of a Native American ceremonial landscape in the Northeast, stone turtles and mounds and serpents, and within the context of stonework you find around the country too. We know, like in other parts of the country, Native Americans built extensively with stone, but certainly many researchers have made the case that in New England you have ancient stonework that was built by Native Americans. So I started to read through historical documents to find accounts of colonists encountering stonework when they showed up. And I started to find many accounts like this where the colonists would talk about pre-existing stonework, obviously Native American. But then I started to encounter these strange accounts of giant skeletons, often obscurely buried in these voluminous town and county histories by noted historians and reviewed by physicians of the day, and the overwhelming amount just shocked me. I read thousands and thousands of pages, started to compile these accounts of enormous skeletons. I mean, sometimes well out of normal range. And together with other researchers, Micah Ewers, Ross Hamilton, and my co-author, Hugh Newman, we've accumulated about 1,000 accounts from ancient America of 7-foot and taller skeletons being unearthed. And one of the arguments is that these are mastodon bones or hoaxes or mismeasurements or whatever, but quite frankly, they're predominantly from burial mounds. These are human remains, and it's not like the skeletons get up and run around. They're stationary objects. It seemed really odd that, so many would be accounted for that were so enormous. So anyways, I was just posting stuff about ancient stonework on the wall at my cafe here in town in Ashfield, and my friend John Marks at the time is a producer for Left Right Studios, and he comes up and he has breakfast at the cafe I'm in, and he saw my stuff on the wall, and he contacted me thinking that this might be good to create a show around ancient stonework. And then we got talking. I said, what's really interesting is all these giant skeleton accounts, and I would like to do an investigative show looking into these. I've been studying for several years now. So we did a sizzle reel. We pitched it to the networks, and History immediately bit and asked us to do a 6-part series, and that was the beginning of the television side of it. And I must say, I did a TEDx talk also that was the number one watched TEDx talk in the world, and it was taken down by TEDx, where I was talking about giant skeletons. But at the end of my talk, I started to go off on this rant about the Koch brothers and the Smithsonian aligning with them to the tune of $50 million in exhibits that obfuscated the truth about global warming and climate change and things like that. So I think that's why I got taken down. I started to go on this rant, dumping on the sociopathic Koch brothers and showing my disgust for the Smithsonian accepting their donations. So that is the long story of how I ended up where I'm at right now.
That's an interesting topic indeed, that it goes from just finding an interest, and within a few years you're talking at TED Talks where they're actually booting you off. That is very interesting to me.
My brother and I, we quite honestly, for about 10 or 15 years, we studied the misdeeds and researched the misdeeds of the NSA and the CIA with the hope of making a documentary film. And, I'm talking about interviews, redacted documents, talking to credible people, credible witnesses. And I just got to a point where I'm like, I'm just going to get taken care of. And I just felt like it wasn't life affirming like this. You know what I mean? It was like this dark and insidious world of treachery and a really frustrating world dealing with, the misdeeds of intelligence agencies. So I just basically, I had a background in intense research, and I just wanted to live a quiet life, quite frankly. And then thankfully Edward Snowden and Chelsea Manning and Julian Assange came out with, all kinds of the revelations that the kind of things we were chasing. And so, I had a background in that form of research, digging into documents and interviewing people and stuff, and it never left me. But I moved away from that kind of inquiry.
You've investigated giants. You've investigated the lost colony of Roanoke. What's the next on your topic that you want to get out there and see what the mystery entails?
Well, we're filming a follow-up to Roanoke this summer. We are going to do an archeological dig at the site, I believe, that we found during last year's investigations. So our focus is there right now, but we've pitched a show that is kind of a worldwide archaeological, anthropological mystery show. I really feel like the realm of alternative research is a weird place. It's like religion and politics, where you have the true believers who don't engage in critical thinking too much sometimes, and then on the other side, entrenched skeptics who are oftentimes arrogant and obstinate and do not look at things from a holistic or a holographic viewpoint, but they keep looking at things from the same angle and obfuscate the truth from themselves. So I there's a lot of like snake oilers, and what I found is it's like this fascinating study of human psychology, this whole area of alternative research, because, quite frankly, once you're entrenched in a position, it's very difficult to admit you're wrong, to change direction. And once you have a tag, like you're the something guy, people stick with it and they try to earn money off it, and that really doesn't interest me. I don't care about being right. I just want to get it right. And I feel that there are legitimate mysteries out there, and I will, and everybody asks me, well, who do I trust? Like there's so many people who are, they're not fact checking, they're promulgating these weird ideas, and there's no like substance to their research. And I would say like Graham Hancock is a great example of somebody I highly respect, and Andrew Collins, my co-author, Hugh Newman. These guys are all measured, intelligent, and were they wrong, really are kind of dogged researchers. So that's like, I don't want to betray the trust of people, like I could tell this story about, I spoke to this guy and he told me this, and to sell books or something, but I really honestly have an interest in investigating mysteries. And if you had me in a lie detector test, I would say I truly believe that there was a pre-Ice Age advanced civilization on the planet. And there was a cataclysmic flood and a cometary impact 12,000 years ago. And these are things I intuitively believe, but I need to scientifically verify or continue to. And I did so anyways. I feel like that's the kind of show we're proposing, and hopefully we get the green light on it, because there's all kinds of fascinating things and to explore.
We are with Jim Vieira tonight on Spaced Out Radio. Jim, when you started getting more and more into this, and you started working and looking into the research, you looked behind the Smithsonian, what they were up to, the Koch brothers, were you surprised that when it comes to these mysteries and these topics, with how political it actually is?
Yeah, that's the big question people ask me a lot. They'll say, is there conspiracy here? And what I used to lean more towards a yes with that. Like, I would look at the Smithsonian's records, for instance. They have, and their own scientists unearthed and recorded over 17 7-foot and taller skeletons, including skulls 36 inches in circumference from a burial mound in Illinois in 1873. And what I see is that the problem is the Smithsonian never addressed it. At the time, there was this mound builder myth circulating in the late 1800s, this idea that some other race other than Native Americans built all these massive earthen mounds and geometric forms you find all over the eastern part of the country. They addressed that and correctly pointed out that Native American ancestors are the ones who built the mounds. But I think it was believed that these stories of giants were tied in with this kind of racist idea of a lost race, which just wasn't true. It was basically the all these accounts we're talking about by so many people, measuring and documenting enormous skeletons. And it's such a strange phenomenon, but there was some hardcore racists that were running the Smithsonian, like Dr. Herb Leach at the turn of the century, and I wouldn't put it past some of those people to obfuscate the truth and to make things disappear. I work with many professionals, though, nowadays, archaeologists, anthropologists. Clearly, there isn't a cover-up going on, and there lies the problem, because I think we both know there are so many real conspiracies. There are, there's banking scandals and corruption, endless wars, and all kinds of, Building 7. There are real conspiracies out there. But then when you look at something like this, the knee-jerk reaction is to claim some vast conspiracy, which I don't really think so. I think it could be academic oversight. I don't know. You don't always find what you don't believe in academia. There could be something else going on here, but I'm just not going to lay down the conspiracy card because it's kind of like, it's like using the race card. You want to be careful about when you break it out, But to answer your question, it's really, this whole thing is so strange, and it has to do with funding, money for academic funding. But I see fault on both sides of this, just like religion and politics, where I see fault on both sides of the aisle. The same thing I see in the alternative history community. I see truth, I see insanity, I see ignorance, I see arrogance, and I'm trying to meet in the middle, and I truly believe there are a lot of astounding mysteries. They just have to be looked at correctly and understood correctly, and not done in a illogical, irrational way.
What did the Koches have to do with the Smithsonian? I have a question about that in our Space Out Radio chat room for you.
Yeah, yes. I linked the two together in my talk only to show basically that at its upper level, the Smithsonian is just another lousy, corrupt organization. I know plenty of working class, professionals who work there and do a great job. The head of anthropology, Dennis Stanford, I've seen him speak. He's great. He has a Solutrean hypothesis. He's open-minded. But at the highest levels, there are guys like Christian Samper, who received $5 million from the American petroleum industry to do a world's oceans exhibit. And the Koch brothers have given $50 million to the Smithsonian to create these exhibits that basically exonerate them from their fossil fuel addiction or whatever, their promulgation of poisoning the planet. And they have this horrendous environmental record. And I know some people think climate change is some form of a liberal hoax or something like that. That isn't true at all. Like 96% of scientists uniformly agree there is vast climate change going on. And if you look at the data, you have to see it. You have to be reasonable about these things. And science has a place to answer these questions. But the Koch brothers gave $50 million, and they created the David H. Koch Hall of Human Origins. So anyways, Jane Mayer from the New Yorker wrote an article ripping the Koch brothers to shreds. And there is a display, a permanent installation at the Smithsonian that says, we don't know what is causing climate change, but in the future, humans may deal with it by living in underground cities and growing short, compact bodies with curved spines to better move around tight spaces. Now, that sounds so bizarre, but it is true. It is an exhibit at the Smithsonian. So you have this insane science fiction-like exhibit about the future where nobody knows what's causing climate change. Fossil fuels have nothing to do with it. And these sociopathic weasels, just getting away with murder, essentially. And that is what is nauseating me about corporate America. It is staffed with sociopaths. The sociopath rises to the top in our society. The CEOs make, excruciatingly bizarre amounts of money. And, working class people suffer everywhere. There was there's people who are interested in conspiracy and alternative views and things understand there's something rotten to the core about our society, and that drives them to want to figure things out, and it creates a lot of anger and disgust. And so it's part of the if you look at anything in our society, you look at academia, you look at the way things are funded, there's corruption going on. So you have to be measured and balanced about how you talk about it. You can't just throw out conspiracy, but there is documented evidence for the things I'm talking about.
Jim, we're going to hop out for our first break of the night. When we come back, we are going to learn more about the lost colony of Roanoke. Jim Vieira from the History Channel is our guest tonight. You're listening to Space Out Radio. I am your host, Dave Scott. We'll talk to you right after this break.
This is Patrick Webster Small, and I'm going to bring you the Webster Phenomena right here on Spaced Out Radio, Monday night at 8 p.m. Pacific Time. Every week, I'm going to bring you the freshest information on the globe. I'm bringing you guys the truth, extraterrestrials in the sky, prophecy, chemtrails, rainbow spot, the seventh angel, biblical skies, ancient gods, ghosts, spirits, see it, hear it. So let's do this every Monday night. I'll see you back here at 8 p.m. Pacific Time.
Visit purpleplates.com today. For over 40 years, the Purple Energy Plates have been delivering amazing results for their many customers. Inspired by the great genius Nikola Tesla, the harmony, healing, and energetic effects of the plates have proven over and over to be beneficial and often miraculous to thousands of customers. With their money-back guarantee and the many benefits, how can you afford not to get one? Check their site for daily specials and choose from their many energy products. You won't be sorry. Visit them today at purpleplates.com for mind, body, and spirit, and expect a miracle.
You hear footsteps in the empty room above you. A rocking chair begins rocking by itself. Don't be afraid of the things that go bump in the night. Reach for Spirit Storybox, the iPhone app the Huffington Post UK called the only ghost hunting app you will ever need. Spirit Storybox. The spirits are telling their stories. Are you listening?
Did you know that Spaced Out Radio is live 7 days a week? This is Jim Tyson, host of Spaced Out Weekend. You can listen to my show, Spaced Out Weekend, every Saturday and Sunday night starting at 1 a.m. Eastern, 10 p.m. Pacific. On Spaced Out Weekend, we like to delve into the paranormal, even the newest technologies that have enhanced modern-day ghost hunting. And sometimes, we'll get a little creative and dabble into the crypto world, UFOs, and much, much more. So tune in at www.spacedoutradio.com on the weekends and listen to me, Jim Tyson, on Spaced Out Weekend.
Hi there, this is Jolene with Rivulet Reiki and Readings, and I want you to relax. Let me help you chill out and get in touch with your body, mind, and soul. In this busy world, sometimes we need to let go, and this is where I can help. Visit my website, rivuletrndr.wix.com/rivuletrndr, or my Facebook page, Rivulet R&R, to set up an appointment for relaxation, Reiki, or readings, no matter where you are. Spaced Out Radio listeners will also receive 10% off their first visit. It's time for you to make time for you.
The Spaced Out Radio Network can be found at spacedoutradio.com. Hi there, this is Dave Scott. Here you can join the latest on our weekly shows and news from around the world involving UFOs, cover-ups, cryptids, ghosts, and more. Read articles from our very talented staff and check out our weekly tarot card reading from Psychic Catherine. You can also sign up for free on our forum and tell us about your experiences. SpacedOutRadio.com. Always live, always interactive.
Ready to find out what's flying up in the sky? Me too. Hi there, this is Rich Giordano. Please join me every Sunday night at 7 for the AZ UFO Show. It's a fast and compelling 2-hour show on UFOs, extraterrestrials, conspiracy theories, and much more. Every week we will have great guests and great topics to try and answer the ultimate question, are we alone in this universe or not? So tune in to the AZ UFO Show with me, Rich Giordano, right here on the Spaced Out Radio Network at spacedoutradio.com.
Would you like to connect with Dave and his guests? Learn more at spacedoutradio.com for the latest news, features, photos, and articles. Spacedoutradio.com is where you can stay up to date on what's happening around the world and up in the stars. And now, back to Dave Scott.
Welcome back to the second half hour of Spaced Out Radio tonight. Thank you so much for being with us. Spreaker alert. We will be changing our formats as early as this Monday, the 21st. If not, it will be Monday, the 28th, that we will be moving Spaced Out Radio over to Spreaker. Better sound, more time on the air. We will be, as of April 18th, extending the show to 3 hours of Spaced Out Radio per night. You wanted it, you got it. That's what we are doing. So I will give you the official announcement as soon as I find out. We will find out by Sunday. That's just 2 days away, whether it'll be this Monday coming up or the following Monday, the 28th. I am stepping out for the weekend after this show, going to find my chi in the wilderness. Uncle Jimbo James Tyson will be in the hot seat for Space Out Weekend Saturday and Sunday night. I will be back Monday with Chronicles of the Unknown. We're talking paranormal. If you want to follow us on Twitter, you can do so at Space Out Radio. Give our Facebook page a like, Space Out Radio Show. Dave Scott, SOR. I can be followed on Instagram. Our YouTube channel is Spaced Out Radio Show, and our new look website is spacedoutradio.com. Tonight we welcome in History TV's Jim Vieira. We are talking the lost colony of Roanoke, as well as giants. We're going to get into the Roanoke story here momentarily. Jim, welcome back. Thank you for being with us tonight.
Yes, thank you very much.
Did you ever think of yourself as famous where you have to carry around a Sharpie because people are starting to recognize who you are due to the television shows?
I am bizarrely immune to fame, and, well, fortune isn't any part of it, I'll tell you. We don't, we get paid, whatever, money to replace our stonework when we film and stuff. But, yeah, we're just two regular stiffs. We, take down decorations for the town in Greenfield, and people, pull over and ask me if we found any giants and stuff like that. I always like to, talk to people who are fans of the show, just because I would be that guy if I wasn't filming it, because I just love a good mystery, and I think we got into some cool stuff in both of our shows so far. Crazy caves and wild stories, and just the type of things that, I like to encourage people to read, to research, to be open-minded and objective. And one thing I find and have been disturbed by is, just when I started getting into the subject, I caught so much heat and getting called a racist and a lunatic and a religious nut, and I have no religious affiliation. I'm a recovering Catholic. I have no skin in the game. I just try to, I have different spiritual beliefs than organized religion, but I found it like so disconcerting. I guess I was naive that the vitriol that so many people had, like from a position of say orthodoxy. And I'm like, science will give us our answers, and not that we fully understand what science is at this point, but what's the problem with investigating, interesting and mysterious subjects? I don't know. I thought like when you share interesting information, people would embrace it. They may not agree with it. They might just say, that doesn't do anything for me, but to all the blowback that I got really I found disturbing. So I've had to develop thick skin and just like do what I love in the face of rejection sometimes, and encourage other people to just not give a rat's ass what people think, and to be as objective as possible, and that's where I'm coming from.
For sure. Yeah, for sure, because every time somebody becomes a celebrity, whether it's a reality show like what you were doing or even more famous in Hollywood or television or music industry, there always has to be someone there to try and bring you down. And you really have to develop that thick skin in order to work with the people who are continually trying to be negative because they're jealous, because that's just their nature, or things along that line, isn't it?
I think it's once again, it's a lesson in human psychology. People who are judgmental and really spend their time basically griping or being victimized, it's this self-loathing coming out, and they just try to find some way to stick it, and the reality is, my belief about reality of the nature of time and space is we're creating our reality with our minds, and basically the software program creates the reality that you'll see tomorrow, the next day, a year in the future. We all know people that say they attract the same kind of partners over and over again, like some abusive boyfriend or something like that, and it's like, oh, if only I found the right person. It's like, no, you need to heal your mind and change the way you think, because you keep attracting that. It's as simple as that. And there are many hardcore skeptics out there who they just not, trying to debunk something. They're trying to vilify somebody, or they get off, basically. They're like lizard brain weasels who can't get a hit. Their brain's so fire and make enough dopamine, so they want to insult people. And it's really lame is what it is. It's weak. It's punk-ass behavior. And I've had to deal with a lot of that. And I'm like, hey, whatever. I learned the lesson that I basically, my position is I investigate things that are worthy of investigation. And I'm not I used to almost think I had to prove a case, over-prove a case to justify that position. Instead, it's now I'm just trying to make the case that's worthy of investigation. And my co-author and I, Hugh Newman, we just finished a book that's now out called Giants on Record. And if you get a copy, you can get it at Amazon, and you read it, you will just be astounded by these giant accounts all around the country. In an era of inefficient communication, they're saying the same thing in the same language with these specific measurements indicating just absolutely enormous skeletons, and by some of the brightest minds in the country at the time, heads of the Smithsonian and the Carnegie at the turn of the century, indicating 8-foot and taller skeletons being unearthed. It's really an astounding read, and I'm not going to tell you you got to believe it. It's more like, if you have a curious mind about it, I recommend you read it and see what you think, because it's really it's quite a thing.
Jim, let's go to the lost colony of Roanoke. What got you interested in this topic, and what do you think happened there?
Yes, we were asked about a year and a half ago. Our producer approached us, and he talked about a guy, Fred Willard, a marina magnate and amateur archaeologist, had an interest in us analyzing the deer stones. Now, the Lost Colony was the first English colonization attempt in 1587, and 115 men, women, and children were left there by Governor John White, who went back to resupply them. And when he returned, they had all vanished. The fort was disassembled. Croatoan was carved on the post, and which is an island 50 miles to the south of Roanoke, North Carolina. So I'll try to fill in the details here because it's kind of a complex story. But anyways, in 1937, a series of stones showed up that purported to tell the tale of the lost colony. And Eleanor White Deer was the daughter of Governor John White of Virginia. North Carolina was Virginia, part of the Virginia state or province at that point in 1587. So these stones show up. We were asked to analyze them, and we found basically that the first stone that showed up was different from all these others, and the others were a series of hoaxes that we were able to really truly pin down in the show. But that first stone was left really as an enigmatic object that told the tale of the lost colony, supposedly, in a really precise way that scholars have been agreeing with ever since 1937 now with these new findings. So anyways, the colonists, there's a fascinating book for Professor Lee Miller. They were essentially sabotaged by the English spy master, Lord Walsingham, who hated Walter Raleigh because he was close to Queen Elizabeth and had all this power. So essentially, they were stranded on Roanoke. They weren't supposed to go there. They were supposed to go north to the Chesapeake Bay. In fact, a military expedition of hardened Irish war vets were there, led by Colonel Ralph Lane in 1585, and they rampaged all around the Albemarle Peninsula, killed the chief of Roanoke, and did all kinds of hideous stuff like the Spanish did in South America. So basically, when the colonists showed up and were left there, they were left in a tomb, and they had to get out of there immediately. So the belief is that they went south to Croatoan Island, and several of the colonists went there to await John Smith's return, and then the rest of the colony went 50 miles into the Main. Now, that's what Governor White gave his testimony. So, interestingly, they traveled 50 miles inland, and a couple of years ago at the British Museum, the John White map from 1585, they did a test on it by showing a laser light underneath it, and they found there was a fort symbol 50 miles into the Main in Bertie County. And that is right across the river from where we are digging at our site where the stone was purportedly found. So in 1937, if somebody made up a hoax about the stone, they threw it in this massive Indian settlement that we found. We found this, football-sized pile of artifacts, essentially, on the Chowan River, and it's right in this general area. So I believe that that's where the colony went, and now we're going to do an archaeological dig, and we're going to continue further to investigate the stone and do some PI work, I think, out in California, and really dig into the story. It's a fascinating story, and if you haven't caught the first 2-hour special, it's really good. There's a lot of the shows on different channels, they're filled with dry humps and false promises, and I'm not really down with that. It's kind of insulting to the audience, and if you watch our Roanoke special, I think you'll be pleased that we delivered on promises, and it was a really fascinating story. But so we've been looking at this for years now, and we're going to continue this year to really dive in and hopefully conclusively prove what happened to the lost colony. I hope to be able to do that.
One of the things that I'm noticing about what you just said was you're putting a very human aspect on it, yet there seems to be so many different conspiracies as to what happened with this. Do you think it is that easy with your research to say that it wasn't that they were murdered by the Spaniards, they weren't murdered by Indians, they weren't taken by aliens? I know I'm just throwing that one out there because I'm an alien guy, but you think it was just something very simple as what you said?
Well, yes. The Spanish didn't get them because the Spanish would have gone on and on about it. They were looking for them. That was an interesting part. The Spanish had, we know that St. Augustine is the oldest city in the U.S. and Florida. They had bases down there in the Caribbean. and it was the time of the Spanish Armada. And the thing was, Roanoke was going to be a privateering base. At the time, piracy was basically sanctioned by the Queen. So some of the most notorious pirates, like John Watts, were like considered, these grand gentlemen in England. But they were really just scumbag pirates who were hired by the Queen to attack the Spanish fleet, because Spain was gaining so much power from robbing South and Central America of its gold and silver, and they were becoming this world power overnight and building this unbelievable, Spanish Armada. But anyways, it was supposed to be an outpost there, and the Spanish never reported that they found Roanoke. And in fact, the colonists immediately split there. It was the worst drought in 800 years, and they couldn't have stayed on Roanoke or Croatoan very long anyways. And the thought is they immediately left and went 50 miles inland to where the only other friendly people were, with King Menatonin on the Chowan River. That's where it was believed they were settled. And the stone itself, that may or may not be real, that we're investigating, says that essentially all but 7 of the colonists were killed by famine, warfare, and Native Americans massacring them as a retaliation for all the evil stuff that the military expedition did. That may not be true, but it may be true. And if not, something like that probably did happen. With Jamestown in 1607 up in Virginia, the first permanent colony, there was well over 100 people dropped there, and when the supply ship came back with Captain Newport, there was only 40 people alive, and they had practiced survival cannibalism, and they dug up a dead native after 3 days and ate him. And one guy killed his wife and was preparing to eat her, and they caught him and they burned him alive, and there was all this crazy shit that was happening that the colonists just didn't know how to survive unless they totally were dependent on the Native Americans. And they had such twisted ideas about, like, converting the heathens to the Christian God and everything, that they alienated the native peoples, who were generally pretty receptive and friendly, and had their act together much more than the colonists. The colonists were there to exploit, convert, to just the plague that spread from Europe all over North and South America is pretty insidious over the last 500 years. And, you have native peoples who've been stewards of the land for 12,000 years, and, Europeans came in 400 years, polluted the rivers and paved over, the country, and we are not good stewards of the land. Our culture is dehumanizing and bankrupt and devoid of meaning, and that's why people are looking for meaning sometimes in alternative studies or the paranormal, whatever. It's like, what is the nature of reality? And our culture is so dependent on distraction and consumerism, and I really feel like people are looking for some other way of perceiving reality. Hello?
Damn mic button. We'll blame that one on me. I have a question for you from one of our chat groups, Paranormal Into the Night, that follows us. And Gail is asking, Jim, in your research, do you listen to the Native American lore, especially the natives with gray eyes who claim they are descendants?
Of the Lost Colony. Is this giant related? Yeah, oh, yes, absolutely. The Lumbee Indians were, they lived on Croatoan Island. So Croatoan Island is now Hatteras, which is 50 miles south of Roanoke Island. And on the ship that went back to England originally was Manteo, who was the son of the Wingina of Croatoan, the woman who was the leader, the queen of those people. So they had good connections, and they had friends on Croatoan Island. So when they came back, when I explained that the colonists had to get the hell out of there right away, they wrote Croatoan they carved it on the fort, and to indicate to John White that they had gone. Some of the colonists went to Croatoan Island. Now, the strong belief by the most learned scholars about the lost colony today are that, no question about it, probably a couple dozen people went to Croatoan Island to await John White coming back. But these people ended up, because the supply ship just came back for, well, I'll tell this story too. John White showed up 3 years later because of the Spanish Armada and all these reasons, and he could only stay for like a day, and all these anchors broke and ships sank, and he basically could only stick around for like 1 day to investigate, and he just found the abandoned fort and had to go right back to England because the captain had to go back. So we never got this full investigation underway. So anyways, on Croatoan Island, the English intermarried with the native people, and the Lumbee Indians, they have many English surnames. They had gray eyes in the past. They have claimed to be have English blood, a lot of them. And John Lawson, the great surveyor in 1700, he met with some of the Croatoan people and remarked how they had gray eyes and they looked English, and it was just this fascinating story of the interbreeding of the natives and the English with this tribe. And yes, we're going to talk to somebody from the Lumbee Nation, actually. The Lumbee are cool. In the 50s, the KKK was being a bunch of a-holes, and they were having some rally in Lumbee territory, and the Lumbees came out loaded up with bats and weapons to kick the shit out of the KKK, and the KKK split down. So it's a really cool story about their fierceness and their toughness and not taking crap from white supremacist a-holes. So to answer the question, yes, it's another fascinating aspect. If people have an interest in Roanoke, I would recommend David Levere's book, The Lost Rocks, James Horn, A Colony, A Colony Strange, and Lee Miller's Roanoke Mystery Solved. Those 3 books are really astounding in their detail and tell the story of the lost colony.
When they went back to the lost colony and nobody was there, were the buildings still there? Was there still evidence that life had been there, or was everything absolutely desolate and maybe buildings falling to the ground or just disappearing?
Essentially, everything was disassembled and moved. So there were some posts, some palisades left, and that's where Croatoan was carved on them. But essentially, everything was taken. They left John White's possessions in a chest, and they had been looted and scattered about. But everything was disassembled and taken somewhere, and that was kind of the bizarre aspect of it. We know that they didn't land on Croatoan with all the fort because archaeologists have been all over that island, which opens up the question. As John White said, they had planned to go 50 miles into the main, and where the secret patch was found in the map by John White is where the First Colony Foundation is digging now, right across the river from us, and they started to find Elizabethan artifacts like pottery and things like that. So they believe that they might have landed there. Now, we're in the same neighborhood, the same cul-de-sac, so the colony would have been, either at our site or their site if this is true. And what needs to be found is like what happened to the fort, what happened to all their artifacts and stuff like that. We're hoping that one of these archaeological digs will find that. But they got up, they vanished. The story was left like what happened to them. They left the planet or something like that. But the reality is they went somewhere with all their stuff in their fort in a panache, a boat, and we think we're in the general area where they landed. And what's interesting about our investigation is this crazy controversial stone is at the hub of it. It may be real after all these years, and we're going to further test it with investigations this summer. And once again, if you saw the first part, you'll be intrigued to know more about it. It's really a fascinating stone and artifact, and it it tells the tale of the second gravestone 4 miles east on a hill from where the first one was found. So if this is real, then there is a gravestone out there that is the most priceless artifact in U.S. history, probably worth millions of dollars. And we're going to highlight that and hopefully search for it in this next investigation.
We are talking with Jim Vieira tonight on Spaced Out Radio, the Lost Colony of Roanoke. We're going to get into giants as well. Jim can be found on the History Channel and many other investigations. You got to just look him up. He's on Google everywhere. That's the beautiful part when you do as much work as he does. Jim, I'm going to get you back on hold here. We're going to take our break at the top of the hour. When we come back, we're going to learn more about Roanoke, and we're going to get into some giant talk. Are they Bigfoot? Are they alien? Or was there just some pretty damn tall people who would get great NBA contracts back in the day? We'll find out right after this. You're listening to Space Out Radio. I am your host, Dave Scott. We'll be right back.
The Phoenix Lights, Roswell, secret military aircraft, flying saucers. Let's check out the sky together. Hi, this is Rich Giordano, host of the AZ UFO Show right here on the Spaced Out Radio Network. Every Sunday night at 7, we hit the airwaves to talk about the phenomenon of unidentified flying objects and more. We want to hear your stories. Maybe you've seen what many others have seen. Only one way to find out, the AZ UFO Show on Sunday nights on the Spaced Out Radio Network on spacedoutradio.com.
Hi there, this is James Tyson, host of Spaced Out Weekends, and I know you're enjoying tonight's show with Dave Scott on Spaced Out Radio. I just wanted to remind you that Spaced Out Radio continues on the weekends with me. On Spaced Out Weekend, we hit the airwaves at www.spacedoutradio.com starting at 10 p.m. Pacific, 1 a.m. Eastern. We have great guests with interesting chats regarding all things paranormal, supernatural, cryptozoological, and much, much more. So tune in to Spaced Out Weekend and give us a listen.
Visit purpleplates.com today. For over 40 years, the Purple Energy Plates have been delivering amazing results for their many customers. Inspired by the great genius Nikola Tesla, the harmony, healing, and energetic effects of the plates have proven over and over to be beneficial and often miraculous to thousands of customers. With their money-back guarantee and the many benefits, how can you afford not to get one? Check their site for daily specials and choose from their many energy products. You won't be sorry. Visit them today at purpleplates.com for mind, body, and spirit, and expect a miracle.
Need a break but don't have the time? Tired of life's running around? Hi, this is Jolene from Rivulet Relaxation and Readings. Let me help you in your time of need. From Reiki to realm readings, I can help provide you therapy for your mind, body, and soul. Check out my website at rivuletrnr.wix.com/rivuletrnr. And if you're a listener of Spaced Out Radio, receive 10% off your first session. Rivulet Relaxation and Readings. And don't forget to give my Facebook page a like. It's time for you to make some important time for you.
The Spaced Out Radio Network can be found at spacedoutradio.com. Hi there, this is Dave Scott. Here you can join the latest on our weekly shows and news from around the world involving UFOs, cover-ups, cryptids, ghosts, and more. Read articles from our very talented staff and check out our weekly tarot card reading from Psychic Catherine. You can also sign up for free on our forum and tell us about your experiences. SpacedOutRadio.com. Always live, always interactive.
The Webster Phenomena airs on Spaced Out Radio on Monday nights at 8 p.m. Pacific Time. I'm your host, Patrick Webster Small, and I discovered extraterrestrials in the atmosphere, which led me to more discoveries, developing the Webster Phenomena, which is the occurrence of extraterrestrials throughout nature. I will explain the Webster Phenomena and all my recent discoveries every Monday night at 8 p.m. Pacific Time, right here on Spaced Out Radio.
You hear footsteps in the empty room above you. A rocking chair begins rocking by itself. Don't be afraid of the things that go bump in the night. Reach for Spirit Storybox, the iPhone app the Huffington Post UK called the only ghost hunting app you will ever need. Spirit Storybox. The spirits are telling their stories. Are you listening?
Want to call in to Spaced Out Radio? you can 1-607-203-5344. You can tweet us at Spaced Out Radio or send us a message on Facebook at Spaced Out Radio. And now, back to the show. Here's Dave Scott.
And welcome back to the second hour of Spaced Out Radio tonight. I am your host, Dave Scott. Spreaker alert. Either this Monday, the 21st, or Monday, the March 28th, we will be moving Spaced Out Radio over to the Spreaker format. You can find us at Spreaker.com/user/space-out-radio. It's that simple. Give our show a follow. Tell your friends if they haven't been around where our new home is located at Spaced Out Radio. If not, you can go to our website, spacedoutradio.com, which will link you straight to the new Spreaker format as of the day we go. If you want to follow us on Twitter, you can do so at Spaced Out Radio. You can give our Facebook page a like, Spaced Out Radio Show. You can also ask to join our private Spaced Out Radio group as well as Podcast Central. On Instagram, I can be followed at Dave Scott, SOR. Our new YouTube channel is Spaced Out Radio Show. And, of course, our new look website is spacedoutradio.com. Uncle Jimbo James Tyson is in Saturday and Sunday with Spaced Out Weekend. I will be wandering off into the wilderness to find my Zen, maybe a UFO, maybe a Bigfoot. Who knows? We'll see where it goes. I'll be back on Monday night talking paranormal. Tonight's guest is Jim Vieira. You may recognize him from the History Channel, talking about the lost colony of Roanoke. Jim, welcome back for hour number 2.
Thank you very much. Here I am.
I want to start off with a question. I get your sense of humor, and I love it. I really do. I want to start off with a question from our Spaced Out Radio chat room here, and this comes from Knit-Knack. How was it that the Roanoke colony was established, and what is the significance in solving this mystery?
The original idea was the French try to is it the Huguenot? Let me think here. Oh, brain freeze. Anyways, the French had tried some colonies at Fort Caroline in Florida. The Spanish had established a base there. You know, essentially it was the reason why the United States is like I guess we can be considered an English colony or has English roots is because the English are the ones who really stuck here. The Spanish Armada was defeated. They were driven out of Florida. The French, were driven out of Louisiana and other places. They stayed in Quebec, obviously, but it became an English land because of these colonization attempts. And it was the first attempted colony. It failed because the colony disappeared, and then Jamestown was the first permanent colony. But I will say, interestingly, that although, Western culture sucks ass, that Queen Elizabeth, Francis Bacon, John Dee, the wizard, the astrologer of the court, and Walter Raleigh and others were members of a secret society called the Dragon Clan, associated with Rosicrucians, and they had these utopian ideals that they were trying to set forward, and a lot of the Freemasons like Jefferson and Washington stuck with these similar ideas. And in fact, there's a grave site in Braintree, Massachusetts, that it's of Henry Adams, the grandfather of John Adams, the president. So John Adams in 1823 has a grave marker where he's basically respecting his grandfather and his greatness and his humility and nobility, and he has it carved there that he escaped the dragon persecutions from England. So there was a real, the church was really after the Dragon Clan, essentially, and this kind of secret society who wished to create an egalitarian society. And originally that was the thought for the U.S. was freedom of speech, freedom of religion, get away from all this nonsense, the intermingling of twisted dogmatic religion with actual human activity. But then, as we know, things got twisted in a perverse direction, and we are stuck with sociopathic, insidious system that, is engaged in endless wars and propaganda and things like that. So the reason to find the lost colony, I think, is just more kind of a memorial to the story of what happened to them, And for me, it's just it's a neat historical mystery. And any good mystery, I just like to give my best shot at figuring out or taking it a further distance so a future generation could pick up the mystery and use some of the information that I've assembled. In and of itself, it's not as compelling as say, lost civilizations or other controversial subjects, but I think it's a really cool historical story.
Is it important to learn that type of history 500 years later?
Yeah, I think it is important. And I think it's important just to see, John White was a humanist, and he was a painter and a naturalist, and he had really strong ties to many Native Americans. And these twisted people would come over, and God, they're just like, I've been blessed to be able to do a lot of ceremonies with Native Americans, with shamans. I just got back from Ecuador for a month doing ayahuasca, San Pedro ceremonies with the shamans down there, and just learning the indigenous ways and this portrayal of savage and unsophisticated. It's so ridiculous. Like the morons or the religious types who come over, with their Bible and their racism and their division of humans. The rain doesn't decide who it falls on; it just falls. You can't own a hill that's been here for millions of years. Our society, our civilization is so upside down and out to lunch, and we have portrayed these indigenous people as like savages, and they had this incredible connection to the land. So these stories are worth telling, like how were Native people treated, 500 years ago, and not very well. What can we learn from that? I talked to a lot of Native Americans, and I'm like, aren't you pissed, basically, is what I say. They have far more patience. They just like, the time will come when things will heal. And, of course, I'm generalizing, but, a lot of Native people that I talk to in North and South America just have a different view on reality that's much more healthy and inclusive and compassionate and forgiving. And I think it's worth learning mistakes of the past, especially from an imperialist society that has no problem to continue to go in and, like what the hell are we doing in Iraq and Afghanistan? We're just stealing their resources, under the pretext of some bullshit about terrorism. And if you look at ISIS, they're a side effect of American foreign policy. In 1953, we overthrew Mossadegh, the democratically elected president of Iraq, and we had the Shah of Iran and the death squads. And, the U.S. keeps pretending we're the good guys. It's like pro wrestling. It's a joke. And I don't know. It's really, truly time for people to wake up to. I know a lot of your listeners are on board, but like a wider audience needs to pull their heads out of their asses and see what's going on in society.
Getting back to the stones and the stone inscriptions, have we ever been able to translate what they say, what their meaning is, and if it detects anything about the history you were trying to solve?
Oh, certainly. The story that's told, it's written in Elizabethan English, so it's Old English. Yes, and the story that it tells is fascinating. It essentially talks about John White returning in his ship, and that the natives sent a message to the colonists 50 miles into the Maine and told them, but they didn't think it was John White because he only stuck around for like a day. So it's this fascinating story that in 1937, if you hoaxed a stone, you would have had to be a brilliant scholar who had access to records that were not available like they are today. So we're talking about somebody well-versed in Elizabethan English, lost colony history, and the ability to carve the stone, and a prophetic sense of history on top of that, because the stone basically predicts in lands where the scholars will tell you they think the lost colony went. But in 1937, it was considered a fringe theory, but it happened to be carved on this stone that a California tourist found in 1937. So, absolutely, in David Levere, Lost Rocks. If you have an interest in this stone and story, it's truly a fascinating story.
We are talking with Jim Vieira tonight on Spaced Out Radio, the Lost Colony of Roanoke, and giants. Everybody's pushing me here. They want to get to the giants here.
Yep.
What got you so interested in looking for giants?
I just, I guess because it happened organically, I was tangentially looking for something else, looking for historical accounts of stonework, and started to stumble across these accounts of giant skeletons just embedded in the historical record. And I've never seen such a thing. Like, to date we've accumulated, say, 1,000 accounts, 7 foot and taller. And I will say, people are like, oh, the 7 foot is in the NBA, but in the numbers reported, it's far outweighs, or it's in excess of the percentage of 7 footers in our population. They're very rare to have somebody over 7 feet. But the skeletons reported are of enormous and robust size. I'm not talking skinny NBA guys, but just like enormous skeletal structures are what has been reported. And I found that, I was being told that it was all nonsense. And what I'm accumulating is all these accounts embedded in town and county histories, like with similar dimensions, the jawbone fit over the face of the largest man in town, and these similar descriptions by respected individuals all around the country through decades of time. It's just, it's not a hoax. It's not mammoth bones. I don't know how to describe the fact that there's so many reported, but there just seems to be a veracity to the reports when you read them, and hopefully, you'll read our book, Giants on Record. It just goes through hundreds of these accounts, and if you read it, you'd just be shaking your head at the enormity of the material. But I also found, and I dealt with Native American people and elders, and Ross Hamilton was on the show. He's a historian who's written about giant skeletal finds. He worked with Vine Deloria, who's a well-known Native American activist and attorney. He's on PBS specials. He passed away about 10 years ago. Vine organized a conference of Native elders in Washington many years ago to share these oral traditions about giants and little people. And Vine said that there was even more lore about the little people amongst Native Americans, which is fascinating. And they looked, they viewed these beings, these creatures as like a reality. It wasn't some kind of folklore or whatever. And now that we found anthropologists and archaeologists found the hobbits on Florensis Island in Indonesia. If your readers listeners aren't familiar, in 2003 a new hominid was found on the island of Florensis in Indonesia. Skeletal remains of 9 3-foot-tall hominids, which is very odd. They lived from 100,000 years ago to 12,000 years ago. So there's anthropological evidence for the creatures, basically, or whatever, relatives of ours. And the Indonesian people have a legend of the Ibu Gogo, of the little people, that has been verified. In the United States, oddly enough, I've accumulated offhandedly or as a side effect of reading through these documents, a couple hundred reports of little people buried in burial mounds and dug up and stuff like that. And University of Kentucky anthropologist William Webb at Moundsville, Alabama site unearthed like a dwarf double burial also. So there's this lore of the little people and giants all around the planet in oral traditions, in the religious texts, in the historical documents. And I will say that the great mystics, Edgar Cayce, Rudolf Steiner, Madame Blavatsky, the Rosicrucians, and the Freemasons, independently in the literature, all talk about giants and little people as part of the population of the lost colony of Atlantis, which is wild. I dug that up through all this research, and it's like, you know, I'm kind of an Edgar Casey guy. I've read through so much of his stuff, and it resonates with me. And they all claim that giants were reality. And so to me, it's an utterly fascinating subject.
I'm sure the NBA would love to have that happen right now. They might have to raise the nets up to about 15 feet. I have a question for you, Jim, from Sabretooth in the Spaced Out Radio chat room. Why would they conspire to disprove the existence of giants but not dinosaurs?
Well, dinosaurs don't interfere with the theory of evolution. I wouldn't, you know, I see academic filtering that occurs. I don't really see, you know, it's tough to say, oh, there's some like vast conspiracy. You know, even if there was a scientific body that wanted to conceal information, I don't think they could pull it off. I really don't, you know, I don't see that as part of the equation, like there was some massive conspiracy. I do see there is a desire to move away from these ideas and to kind of marginalize them. Certainly, the idea of giants would throw a wrench in the theory of evolution. Now, I would say that there can be coexisting realities. That's a theory that I put forward. Like in geology, you have uniformitarianism. That's supposed to be the norm, basically. But you can also have catastrophism mixed in. You have catastrophic events, like which most likely occurred that science is lining up for it 12,000 years ago, like Graham Hancock is talking about, the Younger Dryas impact, the cometary impact on the North American ice sheet that caused a massive cataclysm, and the ancient flood that the Bible and other religious documents talk about. And indeed, it seemed to have occurred about 12,000 years ago. And then, you know, you can have evolution, and I believe evolution, for the most part, is a sound theory, but I just think there was something amiss. I don't know if there's genetic intervention or engineering or what the hell is going on, but the way I see the evolution of humanity, something else seems to be going on. Now, I really can't explain why there isn't more anthropological evidence. Intuitively, I think there's a story here. I really think there were enormous people at some point, you know, like late Pleistocene, like the Native Americans talk about, giant people. In order to prove the case, you need the physical evidence. I understand that. And an anthropologist would say, well, you know, you need to have an anthropological link. And then I would say, well, we know that the Denisovans that have just been found are a new species of human ancestor that interbred with Neanderthals and humans 40,000 years ago in the Denisovan cave in Siberia. And what we know about the Denisovans is from 3 pieces of anthropological evidence: a piece of a finger bone and 2 teeth that are so big that they thought they were cave bear teeth. And they sent it to the Max Planck Institute and found out it was from a new species, and that humans have a low percentage of Denisovan DNA. So if you have these teeth that are enormous, you obviously have an enormous jaw, and maybe the Denisovans are the giants of the past that interbred with humans. That could be the case, and we're going to hopefully find more about that. But you should, in the book we write about it, it was in my show too, these teeth are absolutely enormous from the Denisovan people. And then I'll say another potential is Heidelbergensis. In 1909 in Heidelberg, Germany, there was another ancient, an ancestor of the Denisovans was the Heidelbergensis. And there's a South African branch, and if you Google Lee Berger, he's a professor who has claimed to found bones of 7 foot and taller Heidelbergensis South African branch beings. And he has a thigh bone that's basically twice as robust as a normal bone. And The theory is it could, indicate it's only like half of the femoral shaft. The other is broken off, but the joint and everything is absolutely enormous, and it could be from like a 10-foot tall human. We need more physical proof or more bones to show up, but there are potential vectors here. There are potential anthropological pathways for giant people to have existed. So that's what, I like to engage science and professionals to try to solve this mystery. So in a roundabout way to try to answer your question, it's not like hobbits were covered up. I think if the physical evidence would come forward more and more, there would be more openness to the idea. I will say, however, I don't know if it's because we collectively obfuscate the truth from each other in some holographic way. I'm sure people in your show, they're interested in Bigfoot, they're interested in the paranormal and UFOs and all these things I think there's credible evidence for, but it's not, it's not generally accepted. It's not like, oh my God, it's like on the fringes and it's frustrating. And it's like, why aren't these realities more of a mainstream reality? So what does that mean? Once again, are we collectively obfuscating the truth from us? Is it there's some other phenomena at play that we don't understand, some multi-dimensional thing? I just don't know, but I'll ask those questions.
Jim, in the first half hour, you had mentioned about 36-inch circumference skulls that have been found, and the Smithsonian has them, but they are not releasing them. Do you think then, because that is one giant head, do you think then that there are more bones and body structures out there to maybe collect DNA from than what we are being told?
Actually, I didn't say that they had them. The report is that Thomas Perrin in 1873 in Alton, Illinois, unearthed several enormous skulls. One was 36 inches in circumference, and they crumbled to dust, which is unfortunate.
Oh, okay.
Yes, and that
I apologize.
No, that's fine. And you have this. It's funny. Part of my TEDx talk that was the section where I talked about many reports of these bones crumbling to dust when they were exposed to the air. Many of the scientists and people who dug them out of tombs and stuff reported that within a half an hour, oftentimes the bones would crumble to dust. In multiple Smithsonian accounts, this is mentioned by other scientists at the time. So this isn't some, made up crap. So you don't have to say where the bones are. These are actual scientific reports. And 1874, Dr. Augustus Mitchell in Florida, Amelia Island, uncovered a 7-foot giant skeleton with a giant stone axe too, which is interesting. And he put the skull on a log, and he said to its horror, it disintegrated within a half an hour. It crumbled to dust. And that's another frustrating twist in this is a lot of remains crumbled to dust, but many of them were on display, were measured by professionals, and I bet you some Illuminati freak has some 9-foot skeletons in his basement. To say that the Smithsonian has the secret vault of skeletons, I don't know. That's kind of a stretch. I think that we're talking about human remains. It's not a renewable resource, and I want to remain open about it. I wouldn't be surprised if there were human remains out there that are stashed away. No question about it. I'm just
a lot of
researchers.
Yeah. Sorry, go ahead. Go ahead, please.
Oh no, yeah, you can.
Okay.
Yeah, tell me what you're going to say.
I'll hop in. Well, thank you. A lot of researchers will say that maybe that these large skeletons that are found are actually Bigfoot.
I've heard that, but they are in human burial mounds with human artifacts and displaying, sometimes archaic features, but, regular, described as regular, maybe more robust or whatever, but not like an ape-like creature. An interesting, speaking of Bigfoot, something that always interests me is that Edgar Cayce talked about Atlantis being an actual continent in the middle of the Atlantic, just like Plato had talked about, and that there was a negatively oriented group of beings that kind of caused the destruction of Atlantis, and they would create beasts of burden. He would call them things that they would genetically engineer, and the thought is that Bigfoot is one of these creatures that basically escapes the confines of the continent, or came with settlers to the United States 12,000 years ago when Atlantis sank, I think in like the North Carolina region, and spread out or something like that. But that always intrigued me because the description of Bigfoot is a hairy creature with a high intellect, and the Native Americans have legends, of the hairy creature, and all around the world, the Yeti and everything like that, and that alone is like worthy of looking at. Why would these cultures that were intimately connected with the land, that have respect for their ancestors, that pass down information that is essential for life, have their oral traditions polluted with erroneous information? If there's no truth to giants or little people or a hairy creature in the woods, why would all these tribes and all these people have these oral traditions? Sometimes, almost always passed down specifically. Every word has to be correct. Why would that be the case? Just like, why would secret societies like the Freemasons or Rosicrucians pass down erroneous information through generations? It doesn't make any sense, and that is where the professional and the skeptic fails to look at it. They don't have this link to the past and this understanding through oral tradition. They have a Cartesian model of physical proof that is sterile and has no spirit in it. Science has become sterile and lost its soul, basically.
Jim, we're going to hop out for our final break of the night, so I'm going to throw you on hold. We are talking with Jim Vieira tonight on Space Out Radio, his book, Giants on Record. We're going to get more into giants. Are they Nephilim? Are they biblical? Or are they just really tall people who are a few thousand decades or centuries too old for the NBA? We'll get into it right after this. You're listening to Space Out Radio. I am your host, Dave Scott. We'll be right back.
Want to find out what's coming up on the Spaced Out Radio Network? Go to spacedoutradio.com, where you can find our daily list of shows and guests appearing throughout the week. Want to tell us your story? Be sure to sign up for the Spaced Out Forum for free. Maybe you have a psychic question. Drop in and say hi to Catherine in Cat's Corner. spacedoutradio.com, your 24-hour source for UFOs, ghosts, conspiracies, and more. Check it out today.
Are you one of many who's had a UFO or ET experience? Listen up. The AZ UFO show is on every Sunday night at 7 on the Spaced Out Radio Network. We talk about UFO sightings across the globe, conspiracy theories, government cover-ups, and more with me, Rich Giordano. I want you to know what's going on in the skies above you, so tune in to the AZ UFO show on Spaced Out Radio Network, on spacedoutradio.com, right before Spaced Out Weekend. Our show is literally out of this world.
Visit purpleplates.com today. For over 40 years, the Purple Energy Plates have been delivering amazing results for their many customers. Inspired by the great genius Nikola Tesla, the harmony, healing, and energetic effects of the plates have proven over and over to be beneficial and often miraculous to thousands of customers. With their money-back guarantee and the many benefits, how can you afford not to get one? Check their site for daily specials and choose from their many energy products. You won't be sorry. Visit them today at purpleplates.com for mind, body, and spirit, and expect a miracle.
You hear footsteps in the empty room above you. A rocking chair begins rocking by itself. Don't be afraid of the things that go bump in the night. Reach for Spirit Storybox, the iPhone app the Huffington Post UK called the only ghost hunting app you will ever need. Spirit Storybox The spirits are telling their stories. Are you listening?
Brand new discovery beats NASA. This is Patrick Webster Small bringing you the Webster Phenomena every Monday night at 8 p.m. And you know what we're going to do? We're going to talk about amazing stuff, have amazing guests. That's all there is, man. You know the rest. There's ETs up in the sky. I'm going to tell you which way and why. And we're going to have a little combo about these ETs in the sky. We're going to chill. This is Patrick Webster Small, and I'll be seeing you every Monday night at 8 p.m. Pacific Time. Write it down on Spaced Out Radio.
Is the 24-hour world starting to wear you down? Let me from Rivulet Reiki and Readings lend you a hand. Hi, this is Jolene, and if you're in need of Reiki or a realm reading, come to my website, rivuletrr.wix.com/rivuletrr, and let us help you out. At Rivulet, I specialize in healing your body, mind, and soul, no matter where you are. And be sure to check out the Rivulet R&R Facebook page for your best deals. Remember, it's time for you to make some time for you.
Hi there, this is Jim Tyson, host of Spaced Out Weekend. When you've had a busy week and you're just wanting to chill out and relax, how about listening into my show? That's right, Spaced Out Weekend. I focus on the paranormal, the arcane. I even dip into the techie side of things and much, much more. And I would love for you to come in and check it out. Remember, Spaced Out Radio goes 7 days a week. Dave Scott, Monday through Friday, and me, Jim Tyson, rolling through the weekends. I look forward to having you stop by for a listen every Saturday and Sunday night, 1 a.m. Eastern, 10 p.m. Pacific, only on Spaced Out Radio.
Missed most of tonight's show? Don't worry, you didn't miss a thing. You can head to our website where you can download the podcast at spacedoutradio.com. Now, back to tonight's show. Here's Dave Scott.
We've rounded third. We're heading for home on Spaced Out Radio tonight. Thank you so much for being with us. If you're in the Spaced Out Radio chat room, Paranormal Into the Night, or Paranormal Forum, thank you for participating with your questions. We'll get to more questions for Jim Vieira right after this. Spreaker alert. We will be going to Spreaker either Monday, March 21st, which is just after the weekend, or Monday, March 28th. The time has come. We're just waiting for some final audio. Once that gets hooked up, we will make the move. Then there will be no more sound issues. None whatsoever. So tune in as we move to Spreaker. If you want to follow us on Twitter, you can do so at Space Out Radio. Give our Facebook page a like, Space Out Radio Show. On Instagram, I can be followed at Dave Scott, SOR. Our YouTube channel is Space Out Radio Show for our archives. And our website is spaceoutradio.com. For the final time tonight, we bring in television reality star Jim Vieira from the History Channel, and his latest book, Giants on Record, has been out a couple of months. Jim, welcome back, and thank you so much for being with us tonight.
You are welcome. My pleasure.
I got a couple of questions from our audience for you, Jim, to start off this last half hour. Gail in Paranormal Into the Night says, you mentioned little people and giants lived around each other. Were they friendly with each other, or were they warring, or were they a society that was very well kept?
Well, they're both portrayed by Native Americans and people all around the globe as both malevolent and benevolent, whatever that means. That there's, I'll tell an interesting story at Spirit Mountain, South Dakota. Lewis and Clark were told by the native tribes, I think it was the Shawnee, the Sioux, the tribes that existed there when he went through, when Lewis and Clark went through, were told that there was these like malevolent little people that would shoot poison arrows and kill the natives, and they would like battle with them, and they couldn't almost believe it. And none of the native people went up there, and Lewis would go as scouts, and Lewis and Clark went up to Spirit Mountain with an armed contingent of men, basically to look for little people. It was quite an odd thing, but they are portrayed. You know, I had a native Cherokee gentleman come up to me after one of my talks, and he said, you ever look in the other direction? I'm like, what do you mean, other direction? He's like, have you ever looked at the little people? And I said, this was years ago. I said, no, not really. And he talked about my tribe and every tribe, all the tribal members I know from other native tribes say the same thing. They still understand the legends of the little people. So, barring having a time machine, I can't talk about how these people had interacted with each other. I can just say that they are both attributed as members of a population of the lost colony or the lost civilization of Atlantis, and that in itself is fascinating. I just find it fascinating that these disparate, secret societies or mystics are all saying the same thing. Isn't there something to that? And it mixes with all the oral traditions. I would say, this is a dualistic plane we live in, so you probably have malevolent and benevolent, whatever the person or creature is.
I know, Jim, that some of my First Nations friends have told me about the little people around here in British Columbia. In fact, one got into very big detail with me in regards to back in the 70s, his uncle was out hunting and climbed up a mountain, and he would go hunting up high where the cougars and the deer were and everything like that, and he actually came across a city of little people saying they were between 12 and 18 inches high, and there were hundreds of them. He left them alone because, like you said, in legend and lore, they're malevolent. They're not to be messed with. They have their own society. They don't want to be bothered. I know that down south, it's the same way, that you can't trust the little people. How much is that story covered up compared to, say, what giants are, whether they are Nephilim from the Bible, whether they are relatives of Bigfoot today?
I just, to me, it feels like there is something about reality we don't understand. Like the multidimensional aspect of it. I think quantum mechanics is the best place to go scientifically to try to describe what the hell is going on in the universe and time and space. Brian Greene has this fascinating 4-part special called Fabric of the Cosmos on PBS. I think it's episode 3. He's talking about basically it's uniformly agreed by quantum theorists that time doesn't exist. Everything exists in the present, in this strange present moment, and time is a construct of the matrix. It really, truly doesn't exist. It just appears to exist in a linear fashion. And that the universe of time and space is being projected from somewhere outside of time and space, and they have not been able to locate what that is, which lines up with the esoteric thought of this is kind of a dreaming world, a virtual reality, a large virtual reality world. So if you look at a object that's 20 billion light years away, you change it at the subatomic level by viewing it. Now, how is that possible? Not because it's coming at you, because it is coming from your mind. That there's one global mind that is kind of dreaming the universe of time and space. So all these, the subjects you cover in your show, I just think there's some reality to it. Like Professor Know-It-All would say, oh, you're out of your mind or whatever. But I think, and I've read, the Holographic Universe by Michael Talbot. I've talked to so many wizards and medicine men and shamans and done ceremonies and had multi-dimensional experiences myself. I just believe there's something about reality that I want to understand, and that these other phenomena seem to be interfacing with our reality, And I think that the blind cannot see. So you have somebody immersed in science, and not to disparage them, but they don't see. They don't see the full picture. They don't have an open mind to a broader reality, and they're going to see what they believe truly, So a lot of the professionals that dictate reality to us have a narrow focus, and they literally can't see the truth. And they believe that they have found the truth, and they believe it is to be quantified by physical tests and proofs, which goes a certain distance, but it doesn't answer these questions. So it's a weird and metaphysical explanation that a lot of people won't stomach, but what I just gave as an explanation, I think it's valid. I think there's something that we don't generally understand, or some of us don't understand about reality, that would explain all these phenomena in one.
Mm-hmm. I tend to agree with you on that. And, I'm not a scientist. I was never any good at science when I went through high school, so I stayed away from that, and that's why I became a journalist. But one of the things that I have learned through doing this show for the last 15 months is it is amazing to me how if science is so heavily based on theory, which everything is theory, that they should be accepting of the possibilities because science is supposed to be that way. Yet, like you said, so many scientists are so close-minded that the possibility that other realities may exist, or other dimensions, or portals, or little people to Bigfoot. This should be right up their alley to try and prove or disprove, except it's almost like when it comes to these topics that scientists are like juries, except they're guilty until proven innocent. And to me, that's backwards. What do you think?
Oh, absolutely. The act of science is open-minded inquiry. It should be, You test a hypothesis. And, I see part of the problem, especially with the Internet, age, is there's so much crap out there. There is so much, there are so many stories that have nothing behind it, before it's news or above top secret. They run so many stories that are just nonsense. And there are true believers who don't do their own research and dig into these mysteries for real. And I'm trying to meet in the middle and investigate stories. Like Hugh and I were just down in Ecuador last month for a month, and we investigated the lost metal library of Carlos Crespi, the story about the Taos Cave, and Neil Armstrong, the astronaut, with British explorers were there, and Eric von Daniken had spun this tale of this lost metal library. So we were there already, and we decided to check it out. We got permission from the central bank to review the collection of Carlos Crespi, and it was a bunch of worthless tin that the poor people just were bringing Crespi, who was like a Mother Teresa figure, these artifacts, and Crespi knew they were fakes, but he would pay them money because he was helping the poor, and there was no critical thinking around that story, and it was on ancient aliens, and it was blown out of proportion, and we got to the bottom of it, and the story is basically nonsense. There's no truth to it, but it's that kind of objectivity that I find that's missing. So to get back around, in the scientists are justified to a certain extent to understand that there's a lot of nonsense on the alternative side, but there is a lot of really strong evidence that doesn't get looked at. And I completely agree. What is the problem with open-minded inquiry and the divisiveness and the pettiness and the arrogance? And, we don't understand fully the nature of reality. So science, what truly is science, is always shifting, and there's always new discoveries. So, yes, I completely agree that something is amiss. And once again, I'll say that the ancients had a blend of science and spirituality that allowed them to do astounding things, and our science has lost that, and that's why we're just destroying the planet and have no connection to the earth and each other. It's more of every rat for themselves, get as much crap that you don't need and pile it up, instead of a concern and a care for the planet and all life forms, frankly.
Well, all one has to take on a different angle is a look at big pharma, but that's a whole different topic for another night, but it kind of goes to show where science is going. I do have a question from Paranormal Into the Night from Bill. Careful, because he's a Toronto Maple Leafs fan, and you know what they're like, being a hockey fan that you are. Exactly.
A bunch of drama.
I know, they're terrible. Terrible.
Just kidding.
I can't say much about Mike Canucks this year.
I actually like Toronto a lot.
Bill is asking, why do dinosaur fossils remain for millions of years, yet the bones of these giants are disintegrating into dust?
Very good question. They get petrified over dinosaur bones, it's like a different process of how, I wish I was, I had all the geological terms. There is a reason for that, and it's, I will say only a fraction of these bones were reported to crumble to dust. There isn't, like, Hugh, my buddy, just got back from the Olmec site, and where those huge stone heads are that look African, actually, at the Olmec site in Mexico. Now, there is zero anthropological evidence for the Olmecs. We don't even know what they look like, anything about them, because it's kind of a wet area and humid area. And there are places like in Laos. Around the world, there are, I would say, in the back of a pickup truck, you could fit all the anthropological evidence that tells us about so many of the theories out of Africa and a lot of the theories that science holds true, because there just isn't a lot of anthropological evidence. The dinosaurs are a different matter that have to do with the I'm sorry, I can't give you the full and honest answer I want to, because I don't know all the terminology. But there is a reason for the inquiry, for it to make sense, like I'm saying. But anthropology is just it's a difficult and tricky science, because there just are huge gaps in the fossil record, and the humans are such a weird species with like 90% of our brain capacity locked up. I often think that we're made as a bizarre slave race, because those Anunnaki theories make sense sometimes, because, where's the missing link? You have millions of humans and millions of apes, but where's what ties it all together? Was it genetic engineering that created humans? That's a possibility. I think any sane person, to say there's no life out in the universe is as idiotic as, or even worse than saying the Earth is flat. And that's another thing that, like, the scientists can't go out and say, "Oh, I'm fully confident that there's life in the universe." Life just it bubbles up everywhere at every turn. It is so, you could say, yeah, we'll have to wait for the proof. Some think it's already here. But just to dismiss that like it's a kooky notion is infantile and arrogant.
Pat Penn is asking in the Space Out Radio chat room, wouldn't it depend on soil composition where the bones are deposited to whether or not they survive or turn to dust? Because let's face it, we're not finding every dinosaur skeleton that ever roamed this planet either.
Absolutely. One of the things is, I think they find, like in Montana or Patagonia, there might be the region might have to do with why so many dinosaur bones are found. Like, for instance, a lot of these burial mound sites are just like either stone graves or earthen mounds or whatever, just dug into the ground, and they weren't prepared, they weren't mummified. So in often cases, they would disintegrate. But once again, that's not like this vast percentage of these skeletal remains. A lot of them were dug up and intact and on display. One of the ones, the 8-foot skeleton, the photographs we found in episode 2 of our show from Steelville, Missouri, were certainly laid out in the doctor's office, assembled by people from the University of Missouri. That was a legitimate, skeletal find. So, but it is, it's an interesting twist on the story that some of these awesome, like, huge remains crumble to dust. It's kind of a, an astounding thing. I was going to make one point that I would recommend that your readers get Graham Hancock's book if they haven't got it already. One site he covers is Göbekli Tepe, which is a 12,000-year-old temple site in Turkey. And, when we talk about alternative things, this is a site that's kind of rewriting history. It's double the age of civilization. Archaeologists don't know what to make of it. The oldest enclosures at this site are the most sophisticated, and it existed for 1,000 years, then was buried. And what that indicates is that, these hunter-gatherers were organized by some people like flood survivors or, the great sages to make this place, because they certainly didn't just, one day decide to stop, being hunter-gatherers, make the most fabulous megalithic temple on the planet, and invent agriculture at the same time, which they did. So this is a real, when you want to hang your hat on something that mainstream science said couldn't exist for the last 100 years, this site is the one to point to. And Graham Hancock just has a fascinating book about all these ancient sites.
We are talking with Jim Vieira tonight on Spaced Out Radio. His latest book just came out a couple of months ago, Giants on Record. You can go to Amazon.com or any major bookstore to pick up this book today. What about the Nephilim? We read a lot about the Nephilim when it comes to the Bible. There's a lot of people out there who are of religious context, and the Nephilim are profoundly talked about, especially in the Old Testament. Could we be looking at Nephilim that people are digging up? Because let's face it, religious people, whether it's the Vatican, whether it's other groups, don't seem to tell us the full story about what truly happened, even though they say they have the record.
Well, the Bible itself is loaded with specific giant accounts, and just like other historical and religious documents, Moses sends scouts out, and they come back and they say, we were as grasshoppers in this, in the sight of these giants, and they talk about giants at Baalbek and Petra, these ancient cities, and the giant of Gath, Samuel 21:20, I believe, had 6 fingers and 6 toes, which is really interesting because all around the American Southwest there are petroglyph sites with huge feet and hands with 6 fingers and 6 toes, and around the world you have that on the same anatomic anomaly in statues and footprints, and it's a really odd thing that the Bible would be so specific. And I think that, I'm not a Bible literalist. I think it's an interesting historical document that has truth in it. I just, the Word of God is not being sent through different men, maybe one enlightened master, like I think Jesus, like Muhammad and Buddha, was an enlightened master, and it doesn't have to do with a particular race or religion. We're all humans. We're all part of the same global reality, if you will. So, religion gets strange and divisive sometimes. I'm not really down with that, But I will say that, the Bible is a document that is talking about an ancient flood, a cataclysmic flood. And, in fact, I think they're pointing to the flood 12,000 years ago. And, in pre-flood times, who knows, was there an ancient sophisticated civilization? Quite possibly. I believe so. Were there giants and little people? Where did giants come from? Yeah, and there's thoughts that they were seeded here from another world. I don't know. My intuition tells me there's a story here, and there's some truth to what the Bible talks about as far as giants are concerned. Once again, I'll quickly say that all the greatest explorers you can name encountered living giant tribal members, 8, 7, 8, and 9 feet tall, from Patagonia to Virginia. Coronado, John Smith, Magellan. It's just in order, the scientist, the skeptic could say, oh, show me the bones or whatever. I would say, in order for the story not to be true, all these explorers, all these respected people, all these oral traditions, all of this would have to be wrong. There has to be such an avalanche of evidence that it would have to be false for giants to have not existed. And that's where I look at it from. It's just this overwhelming amount of evidence points to the existence of giants in the past. I would say, in the late Pleistocene age, and people might throw tomatoes at me and say you're crazy, but that's what my gut tells me. I'm a detective. I'm like a psycho who's up at 4 a.m. drinking coffee, figuring out a mystery. And if I stop listening to my gut, then I'm worthless. I have to fall in my gut.
Jim, we got time for one final question. We only have about 3 minutes left, but I wanted to get this one from Joe because I think it's interesting. Jim, if you were to find something groundbreaking in your research, would you post it immediately, or would you wait for the TV show due to contract obligations to release the info?
Well, when we film, everybody signs an NDA, a non-disclosure agreement, so you can't release, any information about anything that is found. I would probably work it into the story. We do real-time investigations, and I would try to work it into a story. I think that would be really neat and novel. I would document whatever was found. I planted scuba dive on ancient sites, and like a megalith was found in the Sicily Channel from 10,000 years ago. That's like 30 feet long. A couple of years ago, and I want to dive there. I want to dive in the lost city of Dwarka off the coast of India, and I hope to encounter something groundbreaking. But I wouldn't obfuscate the truth, but it would be cool to portray it and to show it in a TV special. So I might hold back on it. But I would make sure, it was cataloged and everything. So if you found me dead in a dumpster, that the information wouldn't go by the wayside. But that is a good question. Yeah. I wouldn't, do anything stupid or whatever,
So if the Smithsonian's own Men in Black came after you for that information, we know you found something for sure.
That is true. And that's a good question because believe me, I understand that there were real conspiracies out there. There's real attempts to obfuscate the truth, and I'm open to that too. I'm just trying to once again meet in the middle. But there are dark and insidious forces also at work, and who the hell knows what their agenda is? I just think you have to do what you love in the face of all rejection, and just know that there's nothing wrong with open-minded inquiry. It really is. These are all fascinating topics. I encourage your audience to kind of be brave and be willing to be wrong, be willing to be open-minded, and don't take shit from anyone.
Absolutely, absolutely. And quickly before we go, I would love it if you could quickly tell people where they can find Giants on Record.
I think I'm a Luddite. I have no technological expertise. Amazon, you can get it. Giants on Record. We get a bunch of 5-star reviews, which is good. Yes, I'd recommend it. I think it's a worthwhile book. I think you really dig it. It's interesting. I got fascinating stories of. We hit it from every angle. The mystics, presidents. A lot of the stuff in the show is in there. It's a really fascinating book, and it's well researched. Not to talk my game up, but Hugh and I spent years putting this together, 5 years of intense research to make sure we got it right. And then we did another 9 months on top of that when we were going to first publish it. So I would recommend it, Giants on Record. We're doing another Roanoke special that'll probably air in the fall, film in the summer. And then after that, hopefully you'll see us doing a kind of a worldwide investigative show of these mysteries. And I appreciate you having me on.
Thank you, Jim. We really appreciate it, and we'll talk to you very soon.
All right, man. You have a good night.
Take care.
Do you have a topic or guest you'd like to hear on Spaced Out Radio? Email us, dave@spacedoutradio.com. Send us a quick message on Twitter @SpacedOutRadio, or a message on our Facebook page, Spaced Out Radio. Once again, here's Dave Scott.
Once again, we want to thank Jim Vieira from the History Channel. His latest book can be found on Amazon, Giants on Record. What a great show tonight. Very knowledgeable, taking us someplace that we've never gone on this show before. I love when that happens. Hey, guess what? Uncle Jimbo, James Tyson, is back for Space Out Weekend, Saturday and Sunday night. It's going to be great. Support the cause. Space Out Weekend going live tomorrow night. I am about to head off into the wilderness. Before I do, I want to remind you to follow us on Twitter @SpacedOutRadio. Facebook us at Spaced Out Radio Show. Give our page a like. Instagram, Dave Scott, SOR. Our YouTube channel is Spaced Out Radio Show, and our website is spacedoutradio.com. I'm going to find my Zen. I got my parka on, my gloves, my goggles. It's time to wander into the wilderness here in the great depths of British Columbia, Canada. Good night. Thanks for being with us this week. Appreciate it.